you a gardener who lives in a climate with hot, humid summers like me and struggle to keep your garden looking its best? In this video, I will share the 3 gardening tasks that I focus on during the hottest summer months that take minimal effort but make a big impact in the overall look of my garden. Welcome to Fox Manor Vintage. Where I live in the east coast of the United States, the months of July and August present some of the most challenging weather for gardeners. These months are usually a seemingly endless cycle of hot, humid days with temperatures reaching into the upper 90s and heat waves that can last from several days to several weeks. This weather really takes its toll on my garden and makes it very unpleasant and even dangerous to be outside for long periods of time. So I have identified 3 tasks that I can do in 10 to 15-minute increments, usually in the morning or late afternoon when the temperatures are lower, and these tasks keep my garden from looking neglected. Let's take a walk around my small garden so we can see what I need to focus on. Afterwards, I will show you how these 3 simple gardening tasks really improve the overall look of my garden. This is the view from the front door. The garden is made up of a round flower bed in the middle, and then I have a curving flower bed that follows the driveway. So as I'm walking through, I'm just making note of the things that I need to address. And again, I'm focusing on just the bare minimum to keep the garden looking nice during the heat wave. I'll address any big issues once the weather cools off. So this is a view of the front door and the steps leading up to the front door. I have these beautiful concrete urns that have ivy in them, and these stay green all year, so I have very little maintenance to do with those except just watering. I have a large collection of purple coneflower, and those get quite tall. I think maybe it's the species that I have, so they get tall and they start to flop over. So that's something that needs to be addressed because it just makes the garden look messy. I'm also noticing that there are some weeds that need to be pulled. Again, I'm just focusing on the big ones, the visible ones. And I'm focusing on any flowers that have passed their peak, such as the salvia, and start to sprawl and can be cut back. The hydrangea I don't usually do anything with until spring because I do like to see the blossoms during the winter months, even though they're faded. They do add some interest to the winter garden, so I leave those until spring. So going into the round flower bed, I see that there are some lilies that have finished blooming. And with lilies, once they finish blooming, the foliage gets quite yellow and brown and just doesn't look its best. I also see there are some areas of mulch that are thin and are letting weeds come through. My Shasta daisy needs to be deadheaded. And there's also a bee balm here that needs to be deadheaded, and this columbine has gone to seed. This is a new plant this season. So I need to either save those seed heads or spread them in other parts of the garden. Many of the daylilies still have blossoms, so I will wait to cut those back until those blossoms have finished. Again, this is another area where the mulch has become thin. I was digging up this garden bed this spring, so there are some areas of mulch that I didn't replenish, and because of that, some of the weeds are coming through now, which I need to address. This lily's still looking very pretty, but the one next to it really needs to be cut back. It's starting to look very messy. In the flower bed along the driveway, I have some more lilies that need to be cut back. This is a Shasta daisy that I planted this spring, and unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's doing too well. There is some new growth at the roots, so I don't know if it's going to come back. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed and see what it does later in the season. So here's what the garden looks like after a week. I had to break up my garden maintenance into several sessions because either it was raining or very windy or extremely hot. So the changes are very gradual, but I think just focusing on those three things, deadheading and stocking the tall plants, removing visible weeds, and also replenishing mulch in thin areas really made a difference. So here you can see that I've removed those big weeds that were growing along this little brick path. I also tied up the purple coneflower with some gardening twine, and that keeps them contained and from flopping over. I left these little plants. These are little columbine that's self-seeded, and I will be transplanting those to other parts of the garden, so I didn't pull them out. Here are some more purple coneflower that I just tied together with twine. They're still leaning a little bit, but definitely not as much as they were. I mean, they were almost touching the driveway before. So I think that definitely makes the garden look tidier. So those run all along the driveway. I will be moving some of these because purple coneflower is another plant that will self-seed and take over if you don't keep it in check. So in the fall, I will be moving some of these because they are starting to encroach into other neighboring plants. Here's one of the daylilies that I cut back. Another one, I left the few blossoms that it had, but I think by cutting back those daylilies, it really makes the garden look much neater, less neglected, and gives it a much more pleasing appearance. This is another daylily that I cut back. Again, just trying to remove some of the yellow foliage. I don't cut it all the way to the ground. I just grab it and start chopping it maybe halfway. I cut it by about half. I also trimmed back the salvia. I deadheaded the Shasta daisy that's here. Again, another lily that I cut back. I do think it makes a big difference by doing that. I also replenished a lot of the mulch that in the areas that were bare or thin. I will wait until fall to do a yard-wide mulching. Right now the weather was just too hot to do the whole yard, so I just bought a bag of mulch from Home Depot, and I really just focused on the areas that needed it, the areas that were letting the weeds come through. So again, this is another area that I mulched because there were a lot of weeds. This little rose bush I clipped. I think I clipped it back too much, but it is rebounding. There's a lot of new growth on it. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, would you please click the like button and subscribe? This would really help my small channel grow. See you soon!